Okay.
Oh, is it?
So once again, if I suddenly squeal and run around the table, the internet is blipped out. It's really important that I get this today because tons of my students missed yesterday. So I need them to be able to watch. Okay, congratulations to all of you. You have read the Divine Comedy, which not very many people, certainly not very many high school students, but not very many adults, period, can say that they have done. I do not, demand that you loved every minute of it. It's okay. I also do not demand, B, that you understood everything in it. I don't understand everything in it. It's a lifetime's pursuit to dig through what Dante did, okay? But the start of reading anything hard is getting a basic grasp of how it's laid out. And I hope that someday you guys will either you'll be in another class and you'll need to read it, or you'll just be an adult and you'll say, that was very intriguing. I'm going to take some time and I'm just on my own going to work through maybe a different translation with different notes. I hope that you will do that and revisit it someday. And if so, then we've done a good thing here, right? Because it's just one of those amazing things. It's I say this not because I think it's inspired by the Holy Spirit, but it's like the Bible in the sense that its riches require continued reading. Um, and some books, you read them once and you're done. You got everything you can get out of that book. I feel that way a little bit about Agatha Christie mysteries, which I love. But once you know who did it, except the one that's called, in America, it's called And Then There Were None, the British title, 10 Little Indians. That one I love and I read over and over. But most of the time, it's the type of book that you just visit it once and you've gotten the good out of it. And you know what? Those are fine books. But some books require more of us. And so this was the book that I think required the most of us here this year. So thank you for sticking with it. If you did, if you didn't and you just followed along in what we talked about in class, that still gives you something as well. Because this was quite an epic poem, and we did spend over a fourth of our school year. Well, for you guys, it was way over because you guys only do 30 weeks. So 9 of your 30 weeks, so, like almost a third of your school year was spent on this. I feel like it requires an epic response. And this is when your faces start. What does she want us to do? I'm suspicious. Yes, you are right to be suspicious. I am going to ask you to write a long paper, like a longer paper than I have asked you for. We've practiced this because you've given me lots of persuasive essays and you've given me lots of summas, just paragraphs, and we've worked on writing skills. This is your last writing assignment for the year. See, that you like.
How long is it?
It is going to be 15 paragraphs, which for most of you is going to be 4 or 5 pages, because I'm guessing 3 or 4 paragraphs. Now, it is not due, you can write this down, until April the 24th. And it's 4 weeks. You have 4 weeks. Do not wait 3 weeks and then start your paper. You will be sorry. If you start this 2-week break, you might even do the whole thing. And then you can just kick back and relax. You can set it aside for a week or 2 and then get it out and proofread it and hand it in. You see what I mean? But I have devised a blow-by-blow, paragraph-by-paragraph account of what I want to see. All right? I've got this for you. So unclear whether I have exactly the right amount. Okay, I'm going to give these, but I'm going to have to take one away from somebody. Anyway, just take one and pass it down, and then we'll see. But I didn't print one for myself to read from, is what I mean.
I'll take a picture of it.
Okay, well, I'll give it back to you. Or you can just look on with Kyle if you want to. But either way. But don't let me just keep it. Although I did already send your parents' email out, and it's attached. I attached this so that, because, sometimes we lose things. Sometimes we lose things. Sometimes we forget. Also, I thought it would be good for your parents to know. Okay, let's look through. Oh, let me wait till everybody gets one. By the way, beautiful job of take one, pass it down. Oh, there are extras, aren't there?
I did not get one.
Oh, Jonathan didn't get one, and there's still. All right, hey, Jonathan, then give the other one to Ethan. Okay. Oh, because somebody's Jesse. All right, Alex, will you share with Jesse or? Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'd like to see. Every paper needs an introduction because you don't just dive into your paper. Here's what I want to see in your introduction. What is the title and author of the book we have just spent 9 weeks reading? Hopefully that will be easy enough. By the way, some people don't, I said this to my junior high kids, but it somehow it gets slips through the cracks and people don't know this. The title of a book is underlined or it is italicized, right? The titles of poems are usually put in quotes, but when it's a book length poem, it's not really a poem anymore. I mean, it is, it isn't, you know what I mean? So it's a book. There may be people putting the Divine Comedy in quotes, but I think we can treat it as a book. So this is how we not punctuate. This is how we indicate a book title, underlined or italicized. Yes, Matthias.
Do we have to write it with the 3 lines of words and then skip a line in the 3 lines? Like in the. Oh
No. This isn't
No, okay.
This isn't an imitation.
Oh, no, this isn't an imitation. I'm not giving you anything to imitate. This is all you. So give me the title and the author. Tell me a little bit about the setting. Who is this guy, Dante? Where did he live? When did he live? Why did he write this super long poem? These should be easy questions to answer at this point. I'm talking about a sentence or two, okay? Not give me Dante's sob life story. Although I feel like throwing Beatrice in there would be probably a good idea. Yes, Kyle.
So, when did he live? Do you want the time period when he's writing it, or the actual book time?
Well, you get roughly 1300.
Okay.
The book is set in 1300. He's living around the time 1300. We don't need his exact date. Like he lived in the early 14th century. I mean, this is close enough. Okay. What kind of poem is it? Would you call this a ballad? Would you call this a sonnet? Would you call it an epic? What would you call it? Tell me a little bit about the poem itself. This can be very bare bones. Some of you don't love writing. It's like, this is an epic poem. Great. Or, in this epic poem, Dante pioneered the use of terza rima, which is 3-line stanzas, which have a special rhyme scheme. Okay, then go with that. Some of you want to do that, some don't. That's the bare minimum that I'd like to see in the introduction, okay? I'm going to look for those things. Now, next up, 9 paragraphs. I just want you to summarize the story. Tell me what happened. If you can't remember something, every canto has a plot summary. It's easy. So if you notice, there are 3 parts: Inferno, Purgatory, Paradise. I asked you for 9 paragraphs. 3 for Inferno, 3 for Purgatory, 3 for Paradise. How convenient for us that each one has 3 sections. There's 3 parts of Inferno, right? The part outside the gate, the part after he goes to the gate, the part in the pit with all the ice and people that eat the other people and gnaw on their heads, right? And Satan. Purgatory has 3 parts. The part before he gets in, the part as he goes up the mountain, the part in the earthly paradise. Purgatory or Paradise has 3 parts. It has a part where he's still with those people that have flaws in their characters, inside the shadow of the cone-shaped shadow of the earth. Then he meets people who are outside of that. And then he goes beyond everything and he has this vision of bliss of God and his glory. Do your paragraphs have to be long? No, they don't, which means it might be, you might fit 5 paragraphs on a page or something like that. It might be shorter than I think. But try to be, I'm giving you a whole month to do this. Try to be as thorough as you feel like you can be. You don't have to mention every single person he met in every place. Please don't, as a matter of fact. But give me the general sense, because remember, when we read an allegory, is there something dinging? Is that what we're laughing at? What is dinging? Yeah, yeah. Please silence your phones and sit back and enjoy the show. Okay. That's what they say at the movies, right?
Enjoy the ride.
Something, enjoy the ride. The first step, like I said, to looking at a very deep major piece of literature is to know basically the plot, right? We have to start somewhere. So that's why we're spending so much time on it. As you recount it to me, it will remind you. So now we're up to 10 of the 15 paragraphs. Is it sounding a little easier? You've got an introduction and you've got basically summarize what happened to Dante in this story. Next up, 3 paragraphs. What is this poem about? Choose 3 main themes, one for each of these 3 paragraphs. Some ideas and examples would be love, sin, justice, finding our true home, being exiled from our true home, preparing ourselves for a vision of God, purifying ourselves of sin, living the Christian life. It goes on and on and on. Many of these we've talked about more than once. We've revisited a lot of these. If you have trouble, you can just steal 3 of those. It's fine. If you don't like mine and you can't think of another one, I will help you brainstorm more, okay? But pick 3 things, because this poem is about a lot of things. It's about the need for an imperial leader to save Italy. If you want to throw that one in. That's a little more complicated, but you could throw that one in. 3 paragraphs telling me 3 things this poem is about. And then 1 paragraph. This might be the hardest one. I think the things when I ask you to be personal, when I say, what about you? Well, that can be hard. What did you learn about God and the world? How did it move you? It is the poem. Did it not move you? If not, why do you think it didn't? Is there something about it that just didn't connect with you, didn't resonate with you? It's okay to say so. The problem, I don't mean this in a mean way at all. The problem might be with you, though, and not with the poem. Do you know? Sometimes I have things that, everybody says it's a masterpiece. And I read it the first time, I'm like, I don't love it. So I'll throw this under the bus. I don't know that it's old enough to be a classic. It's not really a classic. But Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. Like the first 4 or 5 times I read it, because I used to teach it in a class and I read it a lot of times. It's really short. I thought, it's an idiot book. I hate that book. And then I read it again. I'm like, oh, it's not so bad. And then I read it a couple more times. I'm like, you know what? I couldn't like that. And so I think maybe there was something wrong with me, not something wrong with the book, if you know what I mean. I just wasn't seeing deeply into it. But that might not be the case. So anyway, I don't mean you have to manufacture a fake. This is the poem that changed my life, and it's going to change the course of my life forever. Don't lie. If you didn't care for it and it didn't touch you or move you in any way, say so. But you could speculate on why that might be. There's something about it that just was jarring to you. Say so. But I would like you to make that paragraph personal. Your experience with this poem. And then wrap it up in a conclusion. Reiterate your main points. And in your conclusion, I'd like you to tell me why you think people still read this poem after 700 years. 700 years is a lot of generations to read something. And for every generation to keep saying, this thing's brilliant. Is that plain? Is that completely understandable what I'm looking for? I mean, it's all laid out, so it adds up to 15. Start. Go ahead and start. Like I said, I'm not asking for a summa. I am not asking for any other written input from you except this for this year. And if you give it to me that week, that's a week before we are done. And I will hustle as hard as I can to get them read. There's a lot of you, but I'll do my best that last week to make sure that everybody gets them back at our last class meeting. Okay. And also just while I'm on, well, let me ask one more time, any questions, comments, concerns? Yes, Jonathan. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. If you want to bring it early, and that makes life easy for me, because then I don't have like 20 of them to read in a week. Yeah, Kyle.
Will we have another week? Will you host another week at your house?
Okay, that was the next news. I am sorry to inform you that I'm not going to do that this year. I know. I really wanted to watch either Kenneth Branagh's Henry V or A Knight's Tale. But my stepfather is having knee replacement surgery the week after we finish. I finish on the 9th. You guys finish early, but I teach another week. So I have classes on Tuesday and Thursday the next week. I've got to get everything ready. And that Sunday, the 12th, I have to drive and go live with my parents for a month. I have to get everything ready for my husband because they need me. So I just don't think I can fit it all in. I got to shop and cook for my husband and leave him stuff. So maybe, later in the summer, like in early August or something, I might, after we're all sort of bored with summer and I'm bored of being alone and just reading books and drinking tea and not talking to human beings, I would like you all to come. And so we'll see, but not right after classes. So I'm sorry. It was my intention, but then my dad scheduled this and I realized there's just no earthly way for me to get everything done and take care of my parents at the same time. So I'm sorry, my parents win over you. Sorry to tell you that. Okay, let's dig in. I want to talk about just a few things because it's a little overwhelming. As the end of this poem should be a little overwhelming. He's seeing God. He has spent all of these pages preparing for the end, which is seeing God. And so I just want to point out a few things. What? And bees that pollinate that mystic rose, which are actually angels. I also need to take about 10 minutes at the end to tell you about the Canterbury Tales, which is the next thing we're going to start over break. And I'm sorry, I am going to repeatedly say next week. That is code for the next time we meet. Just you know what I mean. Yes, Rhett. The Canterbury Tales? You read the Chaucer storybook, maybe, in my junior high class? And yeah, and Dalton. So a few of you've read retellings of some of them, but you haven't actually read Chaucer's versions. So yes, it's going to sound very familiar if when you were younger, you read the Chaucer storybook with me. If not, you're in for a treat. We are not going to read all of the Canterbury Tales. So when you pick up the book, you're like, oh my goodness, we're reading this and we're reading Shakespeare. And calm down. We're reading 2 weeks of the Canterbury Tales. I've chosen some that are not R-rated and are okay for consumption, for student consumption. Okay, where are my
You
notes?
could just call it educational.
Oh, it's educational. All right. As I'm on video too. I'm being live streamed to the world. It's like somebody's going to come after me now. Okay. I want, or lots of traffic. One way or the other. No, you're the only traffic that I care about. Dante, as he approaches God, remember what's happening. Okay, let's talk about this too because we're going to revisit it. We have these spheres, right? And the spheres keep getting bigger. And the outermost universe sphere is the stars. And then there's one outside of it. It doesn't have anything on it. It's the primum mobile. It's the first mover. This is a phrase from Aristotle. It moves. This is a sphere moving, apparently. This is my interpretation. Okay, it moves really, really fast. And then the sphere of the stars moves because it moves. It's like it sweeps it along with it and it moves. But the sphere of the stars moves a little bit slower. And then every descending sphere moves a little more slowly, right? That's what's going on. Outside of that outermost sphere is God, is the Empyrean. This is the place where there is no time or space. It's just God. And that's where he's been moving towards, right? Going through these spheres, he went through hell to see what sin looks like, right? And to stop passing out every time he feels so sorry for the sinners. No more passing out, Dante. And then he's gone through purgatory. He's learned to purge himself of those sins and get back to where he started from, paradise. And now he's moving up, but he's not there yet. And we talked about this last week. He keeps getting more and more ready, more and more able to see the brightness, right? At first, he's going blind, and Beatrice says, I can't smile at you because I'll be too beautiful. And he's getting more and more able to take it. But he still, has a final exam. He has to pass his final exam. His final exam is very much like, maybe Mrs. Gamble knows, I do not know if American universities still do this. If you get a master's or a doctorate, do they have a panel of people and you go and they ask you, grill you on it, and you defend your thesis? At Oxford and Cambridge, they still do. You are getting a graduate degree and you've written a thesis, and a board of very scary looking smart people sits and looks at you and they grill you for hours on your thesis, and you have to defend your thesis. And if you don't get your degree. Dante has to defend himself from the university, board. The university board is Peter, James, and John, which is a little scary. And what he's being examined in is faith, hope, and love. That's the test that he has to pass. But I give you that little intro because everybody reading this at the time is like, oh yeah, like at a university. Like he's defending his thesis. They're asking him to defend it, and he has to defend it. To us, it seems a little odd. Why are they quizzing him? This is weird. But this is the last gate, right, to his vision of God. Because, well, you tell me, why would an examination in faith, hope, and love be the last gate before you get to see God? Ethan.
Paul said, abiding is faith, hope, and love. And that abiding is our salvation, is our sanctification, to be ready to align ourselves with God's will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to have those. Remember when he first was when he was in purgatory and he saw the 4 stars, and then he saw the 3 stars, and the 4 stars were the cardinal virtues, the virtues that pagans have. I always leave one of them out. Justice, fortitude, prudence. Why do I always leave one of them out? Temperance. Common to all humanity that we would say wants to be a good person. Faith, hope, and love aren't. Not Christian faith, hope, and love, right? Not in that sense. These are the theological virtues, the virtues given us by grace. He's not going to get quizzed on fortitude and temperance. We've dealt with those things on the mountain of purgatory, right? Failures of fortitude or temperance or prudence. So his first examiner is Peter. Why do you think Peter is chosen to examine him on faith? Yeah. Why specifically? Why Peter and faith? Why did those two go together? I think Alex and then Kyle, and then we'll go back to Alex.
To do with the rooster crowing three times when
He denied Christ 3 times because he was afraid that he'd be caught.
Okay, so pass to Kyle. Kyle, does that have something to do with faith?
Yes.
What does it have to do with
He
faith?
failed in his faith to God, and in coming out of that failure, he grew stronger than what most people are.
Okay, I wanna just note what you guys just said. Don't forget, Rhett. Please don't forget. Everybody got your hand up. Don't forget. We'll let everybody have a turn. The guy who failed gives the exam. Now, don't forget, but I got another question, or else, Mrs. Ferguson's brain, like Swiss cheese. There was another moment in Peter's life. It is. There was another moment in Peter's life when he notably failed in faith. Okay, he made the noise first.
Okay. Jesus walking on water.
Walking on water. Okay. Now we're gonna go around. Okay, so Kyle and then Alex, did you want to still say? Okay. It moves to Ethan and then it moves to Rhett. Ethan, did you have something else to say before?
Basically, well, that's basically it. He failed in that, but he still followed Christ no matter what. He stayed there, and he denied Christ, of course, but he also was given the keys to the kingdom. So,
Okay. Rhett, do you want to add? Did everybody steal your stuff? Everybody stole your thunder.
So sorry.
Sorry. Rhett, it's like Jeopardy. You gotta hit the buzzer fast. You gotta hit the buzzer right away. All right, so Peter, I just find it fascinating that, I find all of the disciples fascinating because they all failed to some extent. They all abandoned. John, who we'll get to in a minute, abandoned him the least, we might say. He was at the foot of the cross because the behold your mother, behold your son episode. Yes. But, and he and Peter were the only two who ran out to the tomb, but John didn't go in. Right there, Peter went in. John got there first, but Peter went in. But Peter is notable in the Gospels for failing to understand what's really going on. I think of the Transfiguration tent incident. It makes me wonder. So let's put it in terms that are normal and everyday for us. Let's say you have a particular sort of math problem that's very difficult for you. Pick and choose. I don't care. You don't have to share. Or some other school subject that's difficult. And you really have to go over it many, many times before you got it. It just takes a little longer because it's harder. But after you get it, do you think that might make you a better teacher of it to someone else because it took you so long to get it? Do you see what I mean? You had to really work through the issues in a way that people who, oh yeah, I got that. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. You haven't really dug down into it. Maybe you have a surface understanding. But after you just work through it and work through it and work through it, you really know it. And Peter had to work through numerous failures of faith. And other things too, faith and faithfulness, right, to his Lord. But he came back beautifully because unlike Judas, he didn't throw in the towel and give up, right? So I love that Peter examines him on faith because I like that we can be a bit of a loser in something, but bounce back from it with God's grace. It's okay if at this moment, whatever it is I'm working on, I'm kind of being the loser because it's not done yet. The story isn't over, right? So Peter asks him several things. He asks him, what is faith? He asks him, do you have it? And how did you get it? Those are that's the exam questions. That's the final exam on faith. And on page 808, I am, in case you're looking on line 64, he says, faith is the substance of what we hope to see and the argument for what we have not seen. First of all, what does he mean here by argument? Is somebody fighting? What does argument mean, Alex?
And we're talking about faith, right?
Yes.
Yeah, when he says, okay, argument, what he ends up saying is that because we have no more logical proof for it, it is all up to, let's see, it is all up to like argument. Starting with this
Okay,
belief,
mhm.
it is evident we must reason without further visible proofs, and so it partakes by nature of argument.
So some of you do syllogisms. Some of you, or it could be a geometrical proof too. It's the same thing. I mean, it's not the same thing, but you know what I mean. They're very similar. So it's like if you're doing a geometrical proof, but you don't have any postulates or definitions or anything to work from. Like just this. This is all the steps. Or if you're doing a syllogism and both your premises are just this. This is what you're reasoning from. This is the argument. Our faith is the argument because we must reason without further visible proofs. I don't know. Do you think we have visible proofs of, well,
Miracles.
yeah. I have visible proofs that the world must be created, I feel like. Do I have visible proofs that God will, through the grace of Jesus, welcome me into a paradise where I will see God? I have the Bible, but that's not really a visible. I don't think that's what he means by visible proof. I realize the Bible is visible, but you know what I mean. There's nothing in my experience that I can see that tells me that is so. I have faith that that is so. And he says it's the substance of what we hope to see. Substance for them meant the thing that makes it what it is if you strip everything else away. So this is a pen, but it's got all sorts of things about it. It's black pen. It's kind of tapered oddly. It's got this thing on the end. But it could be a pen and not be a black pen. It could be a pen and not have this fuzzy thing. It could be a pen and not have a cap. It could be a pen and be a completely different color. It could be a different shape. But there's something about this that makes it a pen. Do you see what I mean? And so probably when you guys see pens, you're able to identify pens, but you don't know how you do it. It's like, well, it's a pen. And some of you might remember Plato's forms or things like that. That's the substance. And it's lovely. I love this word because what does sub mean? Under. What does the stance part mean? What is a stance? Like, and the soldier struck a jaunty stance. What's he doing? Yes, he's standing. I don't know. This is jaunty, apparently. It's the way he's standing. His stance. Sto, starry, steady, status, right? Stance. What does it mean? Standing below, standing under. It's the thing underneath that holds the rest of it up, like the foundation of it. The substance of something is what makes it what it is. And he says faith is the substance of what we hope to see. Later, he says, on belief, the structure of high hope rises. It is substant, therefore. Everything is on faith. He says hope is built in faith. If I don't have faith in something in its reality, I certainly don't hope in it, do I? It's kind of pointless. If I hope to go, I don't know, get a pizza, I have faith that pizza exists and pizza stores are open and, pizza's worth having. Faith seems to come first. So he says faith is substant. Faith is our whole argument. Second question, do you have it? Listen to his answer. I'm going to read it. You tell me what he's comparing faith to. He's comparing it to something. There's a metaphor here, but he doesn't say what it is. Listen. Yes, I have. I do have it. So bright, so round, usage has worn down none of its impression. My faith is so bright and so round that use has not worn down its impression. What's faith? Oh, but does use wear down the sun? There is something that is round and often bright when it's new, But when you use it more and more, it rubs off the impression. Money. Money. So bright, so round, usage has worn down none of its impressions. Do you ever look in the piles of pennies, to see if you can find a really old one, and like Lincoln's losing his ears and his nose and stuff because they've just been used for 100 years and it's rubbing off the impression? He says, my faith is in such good condition. Even though I've used it a lot, I haven't worn off the impression. My faith is like money. Faith is our currency in the Christian world, in the church. Faith is our currency. And then he says, where does it come from? Whence comes it to you? And I, the shower of gold of the Holy Ghost, which pours down endlessly over the sacred scrolls, new and old. Where does he get his faith? The Holy Ghost, which pours down endlessly over the sacred scrolls, new and old. The Bible, inspired by the Holy Spirit. This is where my faith comes from. Now, this strikes up a question in Peter's mind, and it strikes up a question in the mind of a lot of people we live with. Well, how do you know that's true? How do you know the Bible is trustworthy? How do you know the church is trustworthy? It's a good question. Peter asks it. For what reason do you accept them as divinely true? And I, the proof that shows the truth to me is in the works that followed. Never has nature heated and forged such iron in its smithy. Now, we might not know what works he means, so we have to keep reading. Let's keep reading and find out what he means. And I was answered. Peter said back, tell me how you know there were such works. What seeks to prove itself, if only and nothing more, swears it was so. Like people always testify to themselves, you testify. What were these works? Here's the work he points out. If the whole world became Christian without the aid of the miraculous, that is a miracle 100 times greater than the rest, I said. For poor and hungry, by faith alone upborn, you, Peter, entered the field and sowed there the good plant that was a vine once and is now a thorn. The church is in bad shape. Now, what is the work that happened that Dante thinks proves that the Bible is true, that the gospel is true? The church existing, the spread of Christianity in an amazingly fast amount of time. Got to remember, in 30 years after the death of Jesus, Christians are well enough known in Rome that Nero can round them up and torch them for his parties. 30 years. 30 years. That's nothing in a time when, we have to handwrite everything. We can't just print copies of the Gospel of Matthew and pass it around. Where you got to travel and tell everyone, granted, in a wonderful environment for travel. You know what I mean? Good Roman roads and relative safety. No, yeah, not like, something happens, something stupid in a parking lot and it goes viral and, 1 million people know on YouTube the next day. No, it wasn't that sort of world. This is, okay, we're shifting gears. This is Mrs. Ferguson's opinion. A lot of this is my opinion, but this is really my opinion. I think that the reason Islam spread so fast, less than 100 years after Muhammad, they're fighting guys in France. They've taken over the whole Middle East, all of North Africa, and Spain, and they're 100 years. They've taken over everything. I think it's a cheap parody of Christianity. It's like this, at the very least, heresy, Christian heresy. A lot of people classify Islam as a Christian heresy because it was mimicking Christianity's spread. Whatever forces were behind it, I suspect, because it's just very similar. Do you know what I mean? It comes and sweeps the world. And Dante says, If this didn't have miraculous aid, I don't know what did. 700 years after Dante, G.K. Chesterton, a favorite writer of mine, said, how does he know the church is legit? He said, because it still exists now. Everybody tries to squash the church. Everybody. For 2,000 years, they've been trying to squash the church. And they try to squash it by throwing people to lions and burning them at the stake. And then they try to squash it by heresies arising. And then Satan tries to squash it by splitting everybody up into different churches and convincing us all to hate each other because somebody goes to a different church. And so just wave after wave, and here it is. And G.K. Chesterton said, I think I told you this before, it's like a carriage, horse-drawn carriage, and it's just zipping through a mountain pass. It's like on two wheels, and then it's on the other two wheels, but it never falls over, and it never falls down the gully. It just keeps going, but it looks like it's going to teeter at any moment. But it never does, because we're promised. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. It's not going down. They can try. I mean, it can look kind of grim, but it's not going down. So I love that answer. Everybody listening to his exam shouts, Te Deum laudamus. We praise you, Lord. We praise you, God. Because they love his answer. Hey, right answer, you pass. Interestingly, this is exactly the same psalm they sing when a soul enters purgatory, down below. It was the Te Deum. Everybody sings, yay, somebody's joining us. There is this group happiness. Okay. Final exam 1, done. Final exam 2, hope. James is the examiner of hope. This gives us a little problem because Dante was just, Dante's not infallible. He's just a little bit confused. A lot of modern people are too. There's 2 Jameses. And sometimes people forget there are 2 Jameses. And it's easy to think that the letter of James was written by the brother of John, son of Zebedee. But James is the brother of Jesus, the letter writer. You see, and there's 2, and the first bishop of Jerusalem. It's 2 different guys. And unfortunately, Dante just we're just going to have one James. It's okay. It's okay, Dante. You're awesome. We'll forgive you. So it's a little harder for us to say this is why James is chosen to be the hope, but also the first James, Peter, James, and John are the mighty trio. I don't know. That sounds very flippant. You know what I mean? They show up together. They are invited into a lot of things that the other disciples aren't invited to. Transfiguration and things like that. So if Peter and John were going to be 2 of them, it's fitting that James be the other one. But sometimes he slips in the letter writer James in. It's okay. It's okay. We'll pass on that. And John. And that is, well, some of you remember this from Eusebius. Apparently there are people who argue that there is John the evangelist isn't the writer of Revelation, but that's not a can of worms. We're going to just stuff those worms back in and put the lid back on. Not today. Because sometimes it's not clear to us, but I'm pretty sure it is. But all right, he's got to ask him about hope. What it is, page 818. What power helped you climb, how you bear it. So what is hope? What hope has made you able to come up here and see God? And how do you personally show that you have hope? And Beatrice, I love this. Beatrice just slams in the middle of the exam and says, yeah, I'm going to answer number 3. Church militant, as is written in the Sun, whose rays light all our host, does not possess a single child richer in hope, not one. She's vouching for him. And she is divine revelation. So this is a good voucher. Like nobody has more hope than Dante. It was for that he was allowed to come from Egypt to behold Jerusalem before his warring years had reached their sum. Did I miss something? Is Dante not from Italy? Is he from Egypt? How did he come from Egypt? And how is he going to Jerusalem?
Let's go to the promised land.
He's going to the promised land. He's leaving Egypt. Metaphorically. This was a very common Christian metaphor. The church leads us from Egypt to the promised land. Baptism, we cross the Jordan, right? Sometimes crossing the Jordan in that other sense of the end of our lives has been death. Also sometimes crossing the Jordan. And so she said, he's coming out of slavery to sin and he's going to the promised land. He's going to heaven. And she said, he couldn't do this without hope. Now, this is another little Danteism that I love. At the beginning of this canto, listen to what Dante says. If it ever comes to pass that the sacred song to which both heaven and earth so set their hand that I grew lean with laboring years and long. Okay, I'm going to stop there. What is the sacred song that he's labored over for years? That Dante has labored over for years. If it ever comes to pass that the sacred song to which both heaven and earth so set their hand that I grew lean with laboring years long, wins, if this ever wins over the cruelty that exiles me from the sweet sheepfold where I slept a lamb and to the raiding wolves of an enemy. What is he talking about there? That they threw him out of Florence. If this ever wins over the rotters who exiled me from Florence, then with a changed voice and with my fleece full grown, I shall return to my baptismal font, a poet, and there assume the laurel crown. For there I entered the faith that lets us grow into God's recognition. And for that faith, Peter, as I have said, circled my brow. He mentions the faith, but what is he doing right here? He's hoping. He hopes that he will go home again. That this will be so amazing that even the jerks in Florence will see that he ought to get to come home to his home church, in the place where he was baptized. He wants to go home, and they're going to say, yay, Dante, you are the poet. You are our best citizen. We are so very sorry we threw you out. It didn't happen. He doesn't know that when he's writing. As they say, where there's life, there's hope. Right? He always could hope that he could go home again. And I love the fact that he mentions the faith that he just talked about, and then he gives the most hopeful speech. I hope. Maybe. But then I read it and no, Dante, no. Yeah.
One thing that's funny is like, so he's talking about that, like he's writing it, he's not obviously in heaven, like taking it.
Yeah.
But it's funny the way he is like how he writes it. He's writing it like he went through all this and then wrote everything down.
Mm-hmm.
And so him being there is funny because it's like, well, if I was in heaven, why would I want to go back?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Obviously, he didn't actually go through this. He's just writing all this down as like a poem, just
sure.
And obviously, while he's writing, he's like, I would love to go back. But it's just funny because it's like he's talking to the people in heaven about to go see God. And he's like, I just want to go back to
but in fairness, I mean, point well taken, absolutely. But also, he's been told he's not staying. Do you know what I mean? Because he still has his body. So he realizes that unfortunately, for most of us, Enoch and Elijah accepted, maybe, most of us don't just get translated in our bodies to this realm. And sometime he's going to have to come back and lose that. But yeah, it is that I get Rhett's point. I think that as he's in the midst of these splendors, his mind is going back to his home, which is poignant but interesting. Yeah, Kyle, what did you want to say?
That you could write something that might help people come to faith.
Mm.
Would you choose to go back from heaven?
Oh,
If you
see,
know you're going back there eventually, would you choose to spend those times to come back and save more people or help more people through with writing this poem?
that's a good point.
Would you
Even
come
if he had the option to
If
stay.
he had the option to stay or come back, since he could come back, not everyone can come back.
Mhm.
I think anyone in heaven would choose to come back and help more people.
Paul said as much, right? He said, I would rather go be with Jesus, but it is more necessary for you that I stay in the body. You know what I mean? God's given me a job to do, and his job kind of stunk sometimes. If you ever looked at his list of how many times he was shipwrecked and beaten, and you know the list I mean. That's not a cakewalk. But he said it's necessary for me. Alex, did you want to add something? Okay. Or did it the moment passed? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, Rhett.
I think the best answer and the easiest answer is just like God will decide if we
Yeah.
need to be here or if we need to go up.
Yeah.
And if we're up, then that was his will. And if we're down here,
Then that's his will, and he's got something for me to do still. Yeah, Alex. Ethan, do you want to add?
What I find interesting, and we're all guilty of this, I would say, is the like Carson said, the verse, "I can do all things through Him who strengthens me." We like to take that and use that for like, I don't know, people like to use that for sports and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I can just do all things through Him who strengthens me.
I can't even reach I can't reach the groceries on the top shelf.
Context
I can't
of
even do
the
that.
verse, he's like, wow.
That I can bear all
I can
things.
bear
I can bear hardship. I can be in plenty, and I can be in want, and I can do them all for God's glory because I can bear all things. Or I can do all things. Yeah, I concur. I concur. Always be careful with that. All right, let's go back to hope. Not because we only have actually half an hour left, and we still have the Canterbury Tales lurking. So I'm going to just through hope. This is me buzzing. Hope is the certain expectation of future glory. Certain. This seemed important to me. Hope is certain. Hope in heaven, says Dante, is not like I hope we have pizza for supper. We use hope like that all the time. I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow because I'm gonna, because I got a ball game or whatever. You don't mean that the same way you mean that I have a hope of future glory. This hope is certain. Why? Because faith has communicated to me. Faith is the substance. I believe it is true, and now I have hope. And he says, interestingly, because James says, where did it come from? From many stars, this light descends to me, but it was first distilled into my heart by the ultimate singer of ultimate majesty. Ultimate majesty, by the way, is capitalized. Who do you think the ultimate singer of ultimate majesty is? Who's the ultimate singer?
God.
Well, of ultimate majesty. Literal singer. Wrote a bunch of them. We read them. David, the psalmist. Yes, David. Somebody yesterday said Virgil, and I'm like, ooh. But I don't think Virgil was that much of a religious influence on Dante that gave him religious hope. But yeah, David. And then very odd metaphorical thing. Tell me with how many teeth this love consumes you. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. I skipped a chapter. I'm in love. Sorry. So sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I turned the page. We'll move on. So he passes the hope and he goes to love. His examiner of love is John. Why John? This one I feel like I'm in better ground for. Why John, Alex?
John was the self-proclaimed disciple that Jesus loved.
He's the disciple whom Jesus loved. He is the basically foster son of Mary. After Jesus' death, Mary, behold your son. He also is the author of 1 John, which is just love all over the place. Love, like as much as 1 Corinthians 13. I'm sorry, it is. It's just love. God is no, but 1 John is about love. That's the point. 2nd and 3rd John, not so much, but 1 John is just all about the love of God, just all over the place. Go home. It's only 5 chapters. Go home and read 1 John over break. It's love. It's a love fest. Okay. So John quizzes him on love and asks him. Okay, now I'll go to that weird question because he says, "Yes, I have love." he says, do I want to take the time for this? Yeah, I'm on page 826. For the good, line 28, for the good to the extent imperfect sense grasps its goodness, kindles love. This is the old thing we've talked about this whole poem. If you see something good, it's a good in and of itself. It kindles love in you. You're drawn to it. The brighter, the more we understand its excellence. The more excellent the thing is, the more it draws your love. To the essence, then, in which lies such perfection, that every good thing, not immediate to it, is nothing more than its own ray or ray's reflection. To it, that essence, above all else, the mind must move. Once it has seen the truth, that is the proof and argument that so compels man's love. So water is good. You can drink it, you can cook with it, you can bathe in it, you can put it in water guns and shoot people in the face with it. It's awesome. But it's only good in as much as God made it, and I put it to good use. I can also drown people in it. This is not, it's not a good use, right? No. So as much as it is good, it draws me. But if I set up shrines to water and I started worshiping water, then I need an intervention or something, right? That's not normal. But so the essence of the good thing that shines through it, that's what I'm supposed to focus on. Remember Dante, he's not supposed to keep looking at Beatrice. Oh, she's so beautiful. She's like, not in my eyes alone is paradise, she tells him. I'm just a revelation. I'm just a sign. Don't get caught up in me. That's where you need to look. Yeah, Ethan, go ahead.
When I think of essence here, I think of the essence of God. I think we can't grasp it. Our understanding of God's essence is like, it's
minuscule.
literally, and it says, then in which lies such.
You guys probably know this already.
Not needed to it is nothing more than its own ray's reflection. Everything's reflecting to the essence of God, and we can't grasp God's full essence. It's just like beyond us.
Yeah. He is the essence with a capital E because esse, right? Which is what? To be. It's the infinitive. This is what essence mean. It's the, well, you use the word quiddity. Quid means what, right? The whatness, the quiddity of something, the essence, the being. And so everything we love is calling out to us, is God calling out to us. There's something on the other side. There's something behind it. Look through it. Don't look at it. Look through it. Did I talk about those? Do they still do those 3D pictures, magic eye pictures? Do you know what I mean? You know, and some people can't do it. I know it's giving me a slight headache just thinking about it. But you know, you have to look. It's here, but if you need to focus back here. You hold it here, but you're not focusing on it, and you focus and you see through it, and then it's a picture. This is God. God is behind. God is the picture hiding in every magic eye picture. That's not theologically accurate in any way, but you see what I mean. We're supposed to look through it. And so John asks him this weird question, back to the weird question, tell me how many teeth. Tell me with how many teeth love consumes you.
Well, I'm gonna need more teeth for that.
Wow, that's a weird. But he says, the existence of the world and my own, the death he took on himself that I might live, and what all believers hope for as I do. These and the living knowledge mentioned before have saved me from the ocean of false love and placed me by the true safe on the shore. The leaves that green the eternal garden's grove, I love, to the degree that each receives the dew and ray of his all-flowering love. The church, we're all like a tree. We're the eternal garden tree, and each of us is a leaf. But what are the leaves like? Each receives the dew and ray in a different degree. Remember Picarda on the moon and all of them? So, if you've ever tried to paint a tree or really just looked at a tree intensely, you very quickly realize all leaves aren't the same green. To your eye, the light's hitting them differently, or there's that wonderful time when the storm's blowing in and the leaves flip backwards. Do you know what I mean? And you see that pale backside, and I always know a storm is coming when when the leaves flip over for whatever reason, the wind always sweeps it, and then the greens are all mixed. They're not all the same. We're not all the same. All creation is not the same. This has been, okay, if you're looking for one of the themes for your 3, what is this poem about paragraph? We're not all the same. Creation isn't all the same, but the same God is underneath and behind and outside and in it all. Okay, I have to move on. This is, I mean, it's a terrible, terrible zip through. Let's talk about, okay, let's talk on page 836. Dante is really, really, really high up. He is gone. Where is he here? He is ascent to the prima mobile. He's as far as he can get without going outside the universe. And he looks down one more time. And here's what he says on line 79. I looked down once again. Since the last time I had been born, I saw a length of arc equal to half the span of the first climb. Okay, this is another one of his geometry things. We're not going to worry about it. So that I saw past Cadiz the mad route Ulysses took, and almost to the shore from which Europa rode the godly brute. Europa came from Phoenicia, one end of the Mediterranean. Cadiz is in Spain, the other end. He can see the entire Mediterranean.
The entire known world.
Yeah, which is thank you, Carson, the entire known world. I mean, they knew about China and stuff, but you know what I mean. The part that really mattered, the Mediterranean. He sees the whole thing. Now, I think this is really interesting because just right before this, in the previous canto, he met Adam. And he asked Adam stuff like, how long were you in paradise before you sinned? It turns out 6 hours. And how long have you been waiting, here? How long were you in?
6,000 years.
Yeah, he's been waiting a long time. How long were you in, in what was say in the limbo or wherever before the crucifixion? Do you know what I mean? When paradise wasn't opened yet. How long were you there? And so anyway, he asked him this. But the point that I want to make is he says on page 829, 115, "Know, my son, that eating from the tree was not itself the cause of such long exile, but only the violation of God's decree." In other words, it's not so much the eating as the disobedience. Dante looks down, and how does he describe what he sees? He describes the country on one end and the country on the other, and the mad route Ulysses took. He just brought Ulysses up again. What is Ulysses in hell for doing? What did he do? But
He's like trying to overstep his boundaries.
yeah, overstepping his boundaries and counseling others to do likewise, right? Come with me. We're going to do on this amazing trip. Remember, this is Dante's Ulysses. This is not Homer's Ulysses or Odysseus. We're going to go on this amazing trip and we're going to see things nobody's ever seen before. And you don't want to just go back to Ithaca and rot like old people do. Yeah, you got life left in you. Let's go. Right after talking about Adam, who says he overstepped the boundaries, we hear about Ulysses, who overstepped the boundaries. He brings him up again, overstepping the boundaries, and it all has to be fixed. Also, Dante's about to step past a boundary. He's about to go outside the prima mobile, but this boundary's okay. This one's okay. He's been purged of sin. He can't want wrong things at this point in the state that he's in, this visionary, whatever state he's in. And this is a boundary he's being invited to cross. It's not one he's barging over and violating. Yes.
One thing I noticed, that's what pride is. Pride is overstepping your boundary and putting yourself above God.
Hubris, what the Greeks would call hubris, right? Overstepping one's boundaries, unlike Aeneas, who's pious and does his duty and doesn't overstep. What did you want to say, Kyle?
So just going back to not the actual
I'm good.
action.
Talk while I draw.
Going back to the actual action isn't the thing that's wrong. It's the disobeying behind it.
Yes.
So that means that killing is in itself is not necessarily not okay.
What?
the what?
Disobeyed behind
Are
it.
you
I
gonna
agree.
just start
That's
saying things?
Well, that's
It-
technically you're not wrong. So here's the thing. There's a reason.
I'm drawing.
The intent of murder is different from manslaughter.
Yes.
We judge manslaughter and murder differently, and there's degrees of murder based on intent and the intent of the amount of people you are murdering.
Some of you remember the unaborted Socrates
Oh yes. That's right.
and the definition that they came up with. Abortion was killing an innocent human being, and they all agreed that it was killing, but they all also agreed that killing is not always wrong. Capital punishment, or which you might have differing ideas about, and that's another, like, why don't you debate capital punishment over lunch? All right. So thank you, Kyle. But not to sweep you aside, but because we have now 16 minutes, I'm going to go here. So this is where Dante has been, right? He's gone through the spheres to the primum mobile, and he's going to go out to the appearance. Remember what I said at the beginning. The primum mobile moves the fastest. If you looked at it, it wouldn't look, if you could conceivably step outside the whole system and look at all of it, because it's enormous, you wouldn't see, it would seem to be going slow. Just like those big windmills. I think we talked about this before. My husband, he told me how fast the tips go. I think it's some crazy, like 80 miles an hour or something like that. Like the outside tip of those windmill blades are going, if you could clock just the outside. I'm like, I don't know. I don't. My husband's an engineer. I don't often argue with him about engineering type things, but like, it doesn't look like it's going that fast. He says, you don't know how big that thing is. That thing is enormous. And because it's so big, it looks like the outer tip isn't going that fast. But if you were sitting on it, you're going like interstate speeds. So yeah, don't get in the way of a windmill. That is the moral. So point of light. And he sees stuff going around it. All right, like angels and beings going around it. But here's the confusing thing. This one's going the fastest. This one's going the fastest. And then this one's going the second fastest. And this one's going the second fastest. And Dante says, what? I'm so confused because I thought it worked like this. What is happening? What is happening? And I don't know how long it would take me to find it, so I hate to do it this way. I should be quoting Dante, but I'm going to do it. Beatrice says, Dante, I told you. She didn't get it. I told you when we were on the moon. They're not really on the moon, you know. It's what it appears. Things are not as they appear. This is what it looks like to us. But it's the same picture. This is God. This is God. The closer you are to God, the faster you move. And the farther away you are, the slower the movement. This is what it seems like. This is what it is. Well-meaning people who don't know anything about medieval history, and I'm staying with C.S. Lewis on this. C.S. Lewis knows a ton about medieval history. And according to C.S. Lewis, well-meaning people say, oh, you know how the medievals thought the earth was the center of everything and the most important thing? We're as far away as you can get. When I look up at night, I'm looking in. I'm not looking out in the Middle Ages. I'm looking in that place where I'm not. I've been exiled from my true home, just like Dante. But I get to go back. Dante doesn't ever get to go back. The closer you approach God, the faster the motion. We'll talk about why in just a minute. But she says, Dante, it's the same thing. You've seen an image of the reality, but now you get to see the reality. That the closer you are to God, the faster you move. I got 12 minutes. Okay, let's stop there. We're going to come back to that because this is the first thing he sees in the Empyrean. It's not the last thing he's going to see. but everything, like, I don't know if these pockets turn inside out. Everything, they don't. Everything's been turned inside out, right? The earth no, the earth is the farthest away. Everything speeds up as it approaches God. In Canto 30, it's time for him to graduate again, another step. And he says this about Beatrice, and then he doesn't say anything else. If all that I have said of her below, page 861, top of the page, if all that I have said of her below were gathered now into a single paean, that would be scant praise of her beauty now. The beauty I saw there transcends all measure of mortal minds. I think only her maker can wholly comprehend so great a treasure. Here I concede defeat. No poet known, comic or tragic, challenged by his theme to show his power, was ever more outdone. As feeblest eyes struck by the sun go blind, so the remembrance of my lady's smile strikes every recognition from my mind. From the first day I looked upon her face in this life, to this present sight of her, my song has followed her to sing her praise. But here I must no longer even try to walk behind her beauty. Every artist, his utmost done, must put his brushes by. So do I leave her to a clarion of greater note than mine, which starts to draw its long and arduous theme to its conclusion. She needs to leave him, because not only in my eyes is paradise, he's got something else he needs to look at. And she speaks to him, and he says on page 862, I felt my powers increase beyond themselves. My eyes were lit with such new given sight. They were fit to look without distress on any radiance, however bright. Now listen on page 863. He sees the mystic rose, the little amphitheater. You guys have a picture. It's like a flower with petals, and God is in the middle, and all the saints around, and the angels are like little bees pollinating the flower. They're going back and forth and delivering messages and delivering love back and forth. He says, line 94, 93, just so the sparks and spring flowers changed before my eyes into a greater festival, and I saw the vision of both courts of paradise. O splendor of God eternal, through which I saw the supreme triumph of the one true kingdom, grant me the power to speak forth what I saw. Did you see? I saw, I saw, I saw. He didn't rhyme. There's no other word. We saw that before every time he says Christ. Dante never rhymes anything with Christ. And this is the only other time in the Italian he ends it with the same word. He doesn't rhyme. Remember, when he went to the moon, when he went to Venus, when he went to all the spheres, do you remember? I never asked you, so you might not remember. How does it describe the souls? He never says, I saw them. He says they did something. Well, yeah, because they said they're not there, but they do exist. They came and sort of visited him. He says, there appeared to me. Can you see the difference between there appeared to me and I saw? Mm-hmm. Like, I see things, but sometimes I don't see them clearly and I don't comprehend what I'm seeing. So it just appeared to me in a certain way is different than I saw it. Trying to think of a better example. When we understand something, okay, when we don't understand something, we kind of understand around the edges. It looks to me like, it appears to me that, but when somebody explains something to you and you understand, you say, oh, I see. I see. We use it the same way. We don't really mean physically seeing in either case. He says, I saw it. It didn't appear to me. Like it wasn't accommodating itself. I've been empowered. I saw it. Guys, we get to see it someday. Someday we will say, I saw, I see. We can't say it yet. But he was made able to say, I see. And then Beatrice disappears. And turns around and St. Bernard is there. What? St. Bernard is not nearly as pretty as Beatrice. I don't know that. St. Bernard is famous for contemplation of God. He is the contemplative. He says, Dante, it's time for you to contemplate God, not Beatrice. You get to contemplate God directly, not just his revelation. And he looks on her and she, far up a mountain as it appeared to me, looked down and smiled. Then she turned back to the eternal fountain. Where does Beatrice need to look? She needs to look at God. Everybody in the stadium, the heaven stadium, got their eyes on God, not each other. And he needs to too. And so there at the very end, he joins. And what do I want to say? Yeah. We'll wrap it up because I got a Canterbury tell you. He sees at the center, within the depthless, deep, and clear existence of that abyss of light, 3 circles shown. 3 in color, 1 in circumference. 3 in 1. The second from the first, second, seemed in itself of its own coloration to be painted with man's image. He sees the Trinity. He sees the Trinity as rainbows of light, sparkling light. And there are 3, but there's 1. There's 3, but there's 1. One of them looks like a man. It's not. He sees it. And here my powers rest from their high fantasy. But already I could feel my being turned, instinct and intellect, balanced equally, as in a wheel whose motion nothing jars, by the love that moves the sun and other stars. We don't move because God loves us and makes us move. We move because we love. That moves the sun and other stars is my love for him, is their love for him. Remember, whatever we love makes us move. If I'm inordinately in love with water and I have my little water shrine, it moves me weirdly and wrongly. We move towards what we love. The closer we are to the thing that's most worthy of love, the more we're moved. Those stars, he came out from Inferno, right? And looked again upon the stars. He'd been gone. No, there's no sky in Inferno. He climbs purgatory and he comes out ready to ascend through the stars. And what are those stars? They're just creatures too, right? Moving in that wheel, like a wheel whose motion nothing jars, by the love that moves the sun and other stars. All right, I'm not going to say, do you have questions, comments? Hopefully, you will think about this for a while. I hope. Or maybe bits of it will come back to you. You'll read something else or have something will you think, oh yeah, that's like the Divine Comedy. I remember that. But very, very, so very briefly, let me tell you about Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales. Do you remember that we read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight?
Yeah.
And do you remember that it was alliterative? The poet alliterated, kind of like Beowulf, the Beowulf poet. Well, the Gawain poet, whose name we do not know, lived roughly the same time as Chaucer, about the year 1400. We're talking about 100 years after Dante, right? And the Gawain poet, bless his little heart, said, you know what? We're going to revive alliterative poetry. Alliteration is where it's at. English poetry is going to alliterate again, and it's going to be awesome. And then Chaucer said, you know, I'm reading all those Italian poets, and alliteration is out. Rhyming is in. Meter is in, rhyming couplets, 2 lines that rhyme with each other. We love that. And so he wrote the Canterbury Tales, and I am sorry, Mr. Gawain poet, whose name I do not know, you lose. Alliterative poetry did not get a revival. Chaucer sort of brought in the wave of like English poetry as we know it. So all the poets, I mean, today there are poets that don't use rhyme and meter, but you know what I mean. Like, well, all the poets we're going to talk about next year. We owe this to Chaucer, kind of reviving, bringing this Italian style. So he was a government official. His wife was like had bigwigs in her family, but he had a day job, but he also was a writer. And he said, like many other medieval writers, I'm just going to steal someone else's stories and put them all together, which is just cool. Everybody does this. So there was an Italian guy named Boccaccio. We mentioned him a few weeks ago because he was the first chair of Dante studies at the University in Italy. Boccaccio wrote this book called the Decameron, where these young men and women were escaping from the plague. And they went out into the country because they didn't want to get sick. And so they just told each other stories. And it's like 100 stories in it. They're kind of smutty. Do not highly recommend the Decameron for young people. But it was a reason to tell a bunch of stories. You know, all he wanted to do was tell a bunch of stories. He just needed a reason for people to tell stories, right? A frame. Chaucer said, I need a frame. Then I'm going to tell a bunch of awesome stories. I got it. How about we just have random people on their way to Canterbury Cathedral? Why are we all going to Canterbury Cathedral? This is because Thomas Becket was killed there. Thomas Becket was a pain in Henry's neck. And Henry said, who will rid me of this troublesome priest? And some knights near Henry said, oh, dude, you want to just go get rid of him? Like, yeah. And they just went and killed him right in the church in front of the altar. It was very bad. And then Henry said, I didn't mean that. Unclear. But people immediately started going to visit Becket's, where his remains were, and also the place of his death, as a Christian martyr, because he died because he was standing up for the rights of the church. That's what the problem they had. So, you know, if I live in England, Jerusalem is really, really, really far away, and Rome is really, really pretty far away, and Spain is fairly far away. Canterbury's like a week away. If I want to go on a pilgrimage, just go to Canterbury. It's much cheaper. You don't have to take a year off work, you know, or sell your shop or anything. So people in England often went on a pilgrimage to Canterbury. I went there myself, not on pilgrimage, but on traveling. And you can, I think, maybe I told you guys this, you can go down the steps to the place where it says, here was Thomas Becket murdered in this year. The stairs are stone, but from 800 years of pilgrims, the stone is worn away. There's a dip in the stone from all the feet, 800 years of feet. The stairs kind of dip in the middle. So Chaucer said, I'm going to have this group of random people going to Canterbury, and then it's just an excuse for them to tell stories. And they're going to tell awesome stories. But his group, and the first part I want you to read is, but this, you don't have to write this down because it's in your reading guide, the prologue. It introduces the frame, right? Who are these people? It introduces you to the pilgrims. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are poor, some of them are rich, some of them are stupid, some of them are smart, some of them are honest, some of them are dishonest. Basically, a cross-section of humanity. And one later poet described the prologue by saying, here is God's plenty. In Chaucer's, there's a little bit of everything. I want you to read the prologue. Take special note of the description of the knight, because the other thing I want you to read is the knight's tale. When the knight's turn comes to tell his story, you're going to read the story he tells. And I want you to think about this. Read the description of the knight as you're reading through the prologue, and tell me why the story the knight tells is a fitting story for a knight to tell. Why would this kind of guy tell this sort of story? I just want you to read those two things. The Knight's Tale is fairly long. There's the prologue and the Knight's Tale, and get started on your paper. That's it. Yes, Alex.
Are we going to be able to understand the words that we're reading?
Yes, it is not in Middle English. You have a translation. So Chaucer is readable. Middle English is not Shakespeare. It's got weird words. It's weird, but you could look this up. Like look up Canterbury Tales Middle English or something like that, and look at an excerpt. But no, this is not in Middle English. This is in modern English, so it's tweaked a little bit from what Chaucer wrote, but it's much more readable.
Modern-ish or modern?
Yeah, modern. I mean, it's not Shakespearean sounding or anything. I mean, he might use words that you might not totally, like, I'm not totally sure what that word means, but no, I don't think they talk like that. Like hath and thou and things like that. I don't think they talk like that. Maybe wrong. I haven't reread with you. I read it last summer, but I'm going to reread with you guys over break. Any other questions? All right, awesome. I'll see you after break. Have a good one.